Quite a drop, but also quite a view. Good morning, everybody. I thought I would remake one of my earliest videos, which has had no views whatsoever, and I can understand why when you watch it, they are crap. So I thought I'd remake it. We were going to Bakewell. It's a sunny day. It's the first sunny day for about 3 weeks. So we were going to head to Bakewell and we were going to go and walk along the Monsall Trail. But we were driving through Matlock and I thought, let's just stay in Matlock. And this is where we are. So I'm on this little bridge looking out over a river, which I do not know the name of, which is ever so pretty. And we are going to go up to Matlock Heights. We're going to go up in the cable car and then we're going to walk kind of along the ridge and see what we can find. So we parked in the Artist Corner car park, which is on the A6, almost literally halfway between Matlock and Matlock Baths. Get there early is my advice. As you can see, the car park was almost empty when we got there, which, as I said, was about 10 to 9. By the time we got back to the car in the afternoon, it was packed with people waiting for people like us to leave so that they could take their space. And I don't know if you saw that, £2 per day is an absolute bargain. So we headed straight towards Matlock Baths because we wanted to go up in the cable car before the crowds. And you walk along beside the River Derwent and you realise quite quickly that there is this slalom course set out for the kayakers and canoeists. And then we got to this little bridge, which I think is signed actually for Heights of Abraham. So we cross the bridge back over the river and you get your first sight of the cable car. And as you cross the bridge, you then come to I think it was a cycle track, a bit of a path and a cycle track. And off to the right goes off towards Matlock Bath railway station. And there's a very large car park there if you do have trouble parking. And then you go underneath the railway line and you come out at the cable car station. Now then, a word of warning. We walked up to the ticket desk and we asked for 3 adults to go up in the cable car, and she said a number, and without sounding terribly rich, we didn't really pay attention and we just went thank you very much and we paid with a card. And we got in the cable car and then we sat there and said, how much? So it was £90 for 3 of us. Now, depending on how you look at it, it was either a bargain or it's a lot of money. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of money. We fell foul of it though because we didn't have time to do anything else. And you'll see when we get to the top, there's a lot of everything else. We were up against it in terms of time. We wanted to get 2 or 3 things in and we had to get our son back to catch his train home. If you are not limited by that, there's a whole bunch of stuff. You're met by a town crier type chap when you get to the top, and he tells you all about all the different things, including, I'll start small, the gift shop and the toilets and the restaurant. And then there are caves and there are various other things that we didn't hear because we had to say to the poor guy, gonna have to stop you there because we don't have time to do any of it. And we felt really awful because he was brilliant and he was entertaining and engaging and he was telling us all these wonderful things that suddenly made £30 per person seem perfectly reasonable. And getting back to the cable car, if you haven't got a head for heights, I'd say this one may not be for you. It really is high. There are times when you are seriously high off the ground, and they explain to you at the bottom that you may well be hanging for a while because sometimes people need a little assistance when they're getting off. And generally speaking, I think there are, say, 2 or 3 cable cars. So if one is at one end letting people off, you're halfway up and you are hanging stationary. Now, I thought that was brilliant. But if that isn't for you, I would say avoid. And again, most normal people, I think, spend their day at the top and they do all of the things that you are able to do with your ticket, and then they get the cable car back down. We didn't do that. We walked back down. There is this almost like an alpine pass with switchbacks going back down. You really do lose a lot of height very quickly. I always say walking downhill is harder than walking uphill. This really stretches your legs. And then you find yourself back down in the bottom of the valley on the A6. You cross the road, which isn't as easy to do as you might think. And then you're by Matlock Bath train station. You wander back from there along that path I mentioned a few moments ago, back to the cable car. And then you walk around the back of the cable car, and there is this path going up to what are the heights of Abraham. So you're on the other side of the valley, heading up towards High Tor. Now this climbs about 500 feet, I think, in a very, very short space of time. It's a gorgeous walk. It's really pretty on a day like today. But do not underestimate just how hard. I mean, this was a cold day and we were boiling by the time we got to the top. And the prize that you are heading for is called High Tor, which I think probably is the entire area at the top of, sort of at the plateau of the hill. But there is this path. It's single file, it's one way, it's maybe 20 or 30 metres long, and you get absolutely stunning views up and down the valley. So this wasn't quite at the top, but you come out of that wooded area, that kind of muddy path, and then you suddenly find yourself very much on the edge of the cliff. The thing that you were walking along the road looking up at and thinking, I bet it looks good up there. And it really does. You can look down on the cable car, you can look down on the road and the river and the railway line. Everything looks so tiny. I haven't done any voice to camera because it's surprisingly steep. It's incredibly steep on the way up, and I became a puffing wreck of a man. But we are at High Tor, so I'll turn the camera around in a moment and we will go along the ridgeway. It's been really busy on the way up. It's the first sunny day in weeks. Obviously everybody's come out for the same reason. So that actually wasn't the entrance. We're now making our way down to the entrance. It's a one-way system, so you can't go in the wrong way because it's so narrow. They can't have people passing each other. Ready?
Oh, is this it?
To be fair, on whoever puts the signs up, I think the signs are with good reason. So we've got a handrail and quite a drop, but also quite a view. Of course, a bit muddy. So I'd say if you're scared of heights, it might give you palpitations, but it really isn't too bad. It's not that narrow. And then when you get into this bit, it doesn't even feel like you're on the edge because you've got all these trees and everything. So it just feels like a pathway. But you can totally see why it's one way. And then you come out at the end and you've just got to climb back up and you are at the summit. And from there on, depending on which way you want to go back to Matlock, it's pretty much all flat and then downhill. So this bit of the walk is much more open than the start. You've got quite dramatic views out over the valley, and you end up quite quickly back in Matlock. So we decided from there to head to Lumsdale Waterfall. So when you get to the bottom of the path, you turn right on the main road into Matlock. And it's not very clear, but you come to Lumsdale Road, which I was just showing you the entrance there. Now it looks like a typical kind of residential road, but not for very long. There are, 10, 15 houses, and then it becomes this kind of quiet country road. Now, We were there last year and quite a lot has changed. I don't know why, I don't know what the reason for it is, but last year it all seemed very obvious. It's about, I would say, 2 miles from that junction before you get to the waterfall. Now last year, this fence wasn't there. And we walked past it. That gate looks very much locked. It was only because one of us walked over and gave it a push and we realised that it wasn't locked. The padlock wasn't actually locked shut. But it really took us quite a while to figure that out. That might seem a bit daft, but we were not the only ones. It was quite busy up there and everybody was walking past assuming that that was a locked gate and there would be another entrance. And I didn't really remember from last year. It was only when we walked back and we actually, like I say, gave the gate a shove, and then you can make your way all the way to the falls. Now this is video from last year because we ran out of time, to be completely honest with you, but the falls looked pretty much identical to what they did last year. We've had a lot of rain, they were flowing well. And again, it might sound daft, but walking back down the road you see so much that you miss the first time. This is obviously a very historic road. There is some old buildings. I don't know whether they were to do with industry or mining of some kind. That sounds a bit daft as I say it, but these were obviously historic buildings that are now unused and largely decrepit. But we didn't even see them on the way up because we were so intent on trying to remember where the waterfall was, so it was quite nice looking at them on the way down. And then I was getting sidetracked because you are always walking alongside. I assume it's still the River Derwent. I don't know, it's so much smaller, it might just be a small tributary. But there's so much to see, I kept getting sidetracked every 100 yards or so. So it really doesn't take very long before you find yourself back in Matlock. And we decided that we'd retrace our first steps back to the car. So rather than walk through Matlock, we walked back through the park and alongside the River Derwent back to the car park. Now I've left this in mainly for the benefit of my son. Son number 1 is something of a madman. He enjoys bouldering and apparently this is a hot spot for bouldering, so in a moment you get to see a cliff face and you'll notice it's fairly multicoloured. This is chalk, I'm reliably informed. It's the chalk of climbers who are using it as a training ground. So this loop, where we started at the top of the cable car and we walked back down to Matlock Bath station, back up to the heights of Abraham and High Tor, down into Matlock, up to the waterfall and then back to Matlock, was about 8 miles. So it took about 3 hours to complete with all the stopping and taking photos and whatnot, and then you find yourself back at the bridge where we started, over the River Derwent and back at the car park. Absolutely glorious day. I cannot recommend it enough. So thank you for watching. I believe my next video should be up Snowdon if the weather plays ball, so we'll see how that goes and I'll see you soon.